This podcast is brought to you by Legend Comics and Coffee in Omaha, Nebraska, located in scenic downtown Benson. They got a new location. It's absolutely gorgeous. Check it out. And by listeners like you. Go to Patreon/Two-Headed Nerd. Become a patron. Support this show.
Once, they were two best friends managing a comic book store. But when an innocent blood oath went wrong, the two found themselves trapped in the same body, imprisoned in a strange pyramid made of long boxes, buried deep below their hometown, where they are doomed to discuss comic books until the end of time. They were once Joe and Matt. Now they are known as the Two-Headed Nerd. And this is their podcast.
Broadcasting from the Ziggurat at Omaha in caverns deep below the metro area, where we celebrate St. Patty's Day the old-fashioned way by reading classic Green Lantern comics.
Yeah, but they weren't doing that in Boston yesterday, huh?
It's our pleasure to welcome you to another back issue show, episode 772 of the Two-Headed Nerd Comic Book Podcast. I'm your head number one, the internet's Joe Patrick.
And I'm your head number two. My name is Matt Baum, and let me tell you, nothing goes better with a Guinness than the death of Kilowog. Now that we've discussed our death of Superman and the breaking of the Batman, it's time to dig into the fall of Hal Jordan in the pages of Ron Mars's infamous Emerald Twilight storyline, because DC knows if anything's worth doing twice, it's worth doing 3 times. I'm pretty sure I am the only nerd who hasn't read this, so that's why we're going slack issues. Embarrassing. New story means new gang name. Welcome back, Joe, Mr. Mick Michalunas, Hugo Tverdick, and his sidekick/dad, John. In brightest day and darkest night, no evil shall escape the Green Geek sight. It is Emerald Twilight time in the Ziggurat.
Classic story. It's like issues with Joe and Matt. Oh yeah!
Emerald Twilight, it is a controversial story. It is the breaking of Hal Jordan. There are people that loved it, there are people that hated it, and then there are the people that created it. Ron Mars, namely. He was working at Marvel before he got this job. Silver Surfer guy. Everybody loved his Silver Surfer. Ron Mars figured out a way to make the Silver Surfer sell during a time when the Silver Surfer was not selling. So he was a magic man, basically, right? So DC calls him. Editor Kevin Dooley says, Ron, we want you to come and write Green Lantern. And he says, I love it. I love Hal Jordan. I've always wanted to write Hal Jordan. I'm picturing Hal Jordan as sort of a Chuck Yeager kind of test pilot. And Kevin goes, okay, before we get into that, we want you to ruin Hal Jordan. And he goes, what? And they basically said, Green Lantern's not selling. And it's Hal Jordan's fault. He's too old. There's too many lanterns. Nobody cares about the sprawling space soap opera anymore. We need to strip it down. So here's the story. And they lay out the skeleton of the story. And the skeleton of the story is Hal Jordan goes away. There is one Green Lantern afterwards, but you get to create him. How's that sound? And he goes,
That's not a skeleton.
Yeah, that's
not even a bone.
No.
That's not even a single bone.
And he's like, okay, so let me get this straight. Like, do I have complete editorial control? And they're like, sure, book doesn't sell anyway. Go for it. He got to do this whole cloth. Now, Gerard Jones had been writing the comic before this. Convicted sex offender Gerard Jones. We won't go into it, but, you know, whatever.
That happened much later.
Sure. It was not selling. There were fans, definitely, and they were very vocal about what happened afterwards when Ron Mars came on. But Gerard Jones was not told this was happening. He had written, and there was art drawn for issues 48, 49, and 50, which were a 3-part story where Hal was going to go fight the Guardians and find out that there were evil Guardians impersonating the good Guardians. And these evil Guardians had put things in motion since Hal was very young to kill his father, dad, who died during a test flight, right? Mm-hmm. So Hal gets in this, I don't know who to shoot with my conjured Green Lantern gun. They're like, don't shoot us, shoot them. They're the bad. dumb story, right? And DC's like, man, thanks a lot, Gerard. You've been great. You're fired. Ron Mars is coming on. We're getting rid of Hal. We're going to introduce Kyle. And he's got a hell of a story. And Ron Mars says, yep, I sure do. It's 6 issues long. And DC said, nope, it's 3 because we want the change in issue 50.
Well, yeah, come on, Ron. He should have known that.
So 51, we hit the ground running. Well, and he was like, okay. So he cuts out 3 issues of story and says, who's going to draw this? And they said, well, it's a lot to draw because this stuff was super late. So we get 3 artists instead of 1. And the only thing was like, look, you're going to end up with Daryl Banks. Daryl Banks is great.
He's going to be the ongoing artist going forward.
But we don't have time for Daryl Banks to draw 3 issues. So we got a couple other guys to fill in. One of which we're going to talk about in just a second here. And it's pretty good. One of which, not so great. We'll talk about that too. But before we get into that, Joe Patrick, why don't you bring us up to speed on the story here? Because if you were reading Green Lantern, Gerard Jones' Green Lantern, you would have had 1 issue where you sort of got a hint about what's happening. Yeah, and that issue ends with him being fine with it. Like he's being
like sort of fine.
He's like, you know what? Sucks. Sort of fine. I'm upset, but
yeah, right.
I'm Hal Jordan and I'm a hero.
All right. Well, I want to start by saying hello to the Green Geeks.
This issue idea and doing on St. Patty's Day, and the name was all Hugo.
That's awesome.
That's right.
That's
I
awesome.
named us the Emerald Entourage, and Hugo was like, how about the Green Geeks? I was like, yeah, that's better.
I like Gang Green because that's what like a lot of
the Gang Green.
Yeah, I always like Gang Green.
Gang Green is really good.
Yeah, but I didn't come up with that.
It's all right.
I'm pretty sure Guy Gardner called him that when he was not a Green Lantern for a while, and he was like, whatever,
that's so
dorks,
good.
you know.
What about the Gang Green?
Yeah, totally.
Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate it. The story thus far, during the vicious attack against Earth by Mongol and the cyborg Superman, during Reign of the Supermen, see episode whatever, Macho, plug that in.
Editor's note. The issue was Green Lantern number 46, and you discussed it in episode 723.
Hal Jordan's home, Coast City, was wiped from the face of the Earth. Hal took the fight to Mongol and was injured in the process. Afterwards, Earth's heroes erected a monument on the site to remember what was lost. But that wasn't good enough for Hal, and what happened next would change the face of the DC universe forever. Literally true.
Yeah.
We're still dealing with it.
We're still dealing with it today.
So let's get into it. Emerald Twilight, as Matt mentioned earlier, it ran from issues 48 through 50, which came out in 1994, written by Ron Mars. Issue 48 was drawn by Bill Willingham. People tend to forget that Bill Willingham was also an artist.
Totally forgot. I looked at the cover and I was like, Willingham wrote this too? That's my first thought.
He was an indie creator. He did the Elementals for Comico.
Yeah.
And Comico? I think Comico.
I think you're right.
And he was a writer-artist. Inks here are by Roy Campanella, and maybe some Romeo Tanghal thrown in there for a good measure. Emerald Twilight Part 1, the past. Hal Jordan is devastated after the destruction of Coast City. See also the thing I just read. He uses his power ring to recreate a city of emerald energy, including buildings, cars, and people. That is a big no-no. Using your ring for personal gain is bad news. And so the Guardians send a hologram to yell at him for abusing his power. The illusion fades. Hal's ring runs out of energy. He asks for more power so that he can recreate the city for real. The Guardians refuse. They say, quit being so selfish. These things happen. You got a whole sector to protect, damn it. Furious, Hal decides he's going to defy the Guardians. He absorbs the energy from the construct, which gives him enough power to get off planet, and then he sets off for Oa.
Oh, okay. Before we get there, we get a final page with a hot dude and a hot babe sitting on the beach at night in their bathing suits. And we're like, who the heck are these two? They're no one of any importance. Let's not worry about it. Maybe we'll get to them later. Maybe not. But Turns out it's Kyle Rayner and his hot girlfriend.
It's Kyle Rayner and his
Ow.
girlfriend Alex.
Miss Fridge herself.
Yeah.
Yep. Sadly. But this issue, okay, just reading it standalone before I went like, okay, did Hal freak out at all before this? Like, this issue is fantastic. It's great. Like, Ron Mars, his first DC work, writing Hal, comes in and nails it. Hal talking to his dad and stuff, and his dad being all like military guy. It's like, well, you should have been better. You should have been better. Like, dad couldn't say I love you and stuff like that. He's too tough. He couldn't even say he was proud of him. Like, oh, it's a real.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeff Johns would probably soften him up a little bit more.
Well, Hal
because
softens him up too.
we get more about. Well, also remember that this is Hal's
Right.
skewed memory, right?
Yeah, his construction of like his vision of his dad.
I do think it's strange that like the destruction happens and then he immediately goes to this like this sort of selfish place where he's working through his own issues, his mom, his dad, and then starts to build the city out. Like, and then the mission becomes about the city. It's just strange to start at the self. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. Like, it might be like a literal good narrative choice to show that he's in a selfish spot. It was just interesting. I thought.
Yeah. And like, even the city he creates, I don't know a lot about Star City, but this sure looks like small town USA.
Coast City.
Oh, pardon me. Coast City. This sure looks like
Coast City is supposed to be a lot. I mean, it's pretty big. Yeah.
it's like a
pretty big
Philadelphia,
metropolitan.
like kind of like big,
Yeah.
right?
Precisely, yeah.
And he
I mean, 6 million people, I think, is the number that I remember.
yeah, so it's a major East Coast city, and maybe it's just like he's in Old Town Coast City where he like there's the ice cream shop and the little boy kiss and the girls kissing
Well,
the
and
boy.
a lot
He's
of
like,
it is when he was a kid. So
Yeah, again,
okay.
his memory. Like, this is sort of like a town square sort of situation.
yeah, 'cause he sees his
Yeah.
girlfriend here and stuff.
Because there's a
ex.
park and a statue.
Yeah. And like he saves a cat from a tree. He's just Hal being Hal. It's adorable. But here's the thing, and we'll get into it more later when we meet some of the other Green Lanterns. All he did was basically conjure a 3D picture book of the city as he remembered it. And then the Guardians come and they're like, you should not have done that, dude. You broke the rules. Take your ring off.
Well, what they say is, you got to come to Oa. We're going to and get your wrist slapped.
Right.
yeah.
But then Hal wildly overreacts.
I mean, I guess, but like, we're going to encounter another Green Lantern next issue.
Well, and I that's what I think is good about the writing, though, is that it's kind of very quickly over 3 issues, like gets out of hand. You like get in a fight with somebody, and then by the end, you're like, whoa, we both overreacted over that. And it started off really smooth. Like, that's kind of what's happening here is he did something just for himself. They came in and were like, bro, you can't do that. You're going to come in for, infractions. And then he overreacts and it just sort of escalates. And I think that's what's so good about it. And the fact I sort of have in here in my notes, like it's crazy. I mean, definitely in the next issue, but it's crazy how fast all of this unfurls. And now Matt knowing the what was really going on behind the scenes, it makes sense, but it actually helps the story, I think, because it feels like he is just spiraling. Like,
big time.
Works well for me.
Yeah. He goes bonkers real fast.
I think the equivalent here is that like Hal used his badge to get out of a parking ticket, right? To stop a meter maid from leaving a parking ticket.
Sure.
And it ends with him blowing up.
And then it got back to his bosses, and his bosses were like, we'll see you at the precinct, sir.
Yeah. And then
And
Ron
then-
annihilates everyone in the precinct.
Yeah, obliterates the precinct, yeah.
Yeah. And then later destroys the planet.
Right. And then,
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's his falling down,
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
Right. I think that like if this issue had ended with Hal going to Oa and just like getting yelled at for 5 minutes, then, that's where it would have ended. But instead, Hal's like, hey, can you just help me fix my life real quick? And they told him no. And that was the last straw.
They also do say surrender your ring and be prepared for transport to Oa.
Yeah, because when you get suspended, you get
you painted your badge.
Like
Take a gun in your
as a
badge.
cop, when you shoot somebody, you have to turn in your gun and
Yeah.
Well,
His line of this isn't about personal gain, it's about personal loss, I thought was just
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Like Hal's dealing with trauma, and he's not dealing with trauma well. And the Guardians are not famous for having the most gentle hand, or even being remotely nice or good at their jobs up to this point.
Or having a hand at all.
Yeah.
Because they talk about over and over how the Guardians just don't act ever.
They don't. They let Krypton explode and stuff, right? I mean, like, they're the Guardians of the universe. They've been around forever, and like bad shit happens constantly. And they decide, well, you go out and stop that. You go out and stop. Like,
well, I mean, for all the Guardians' power, there were only 3,600 Green Lanterns.
I guess.
To cover the entire universe.
But still, I've
I
never.
mean, to match point, they're DC's Watchers.
Yeah, kind of.
Just-
But all they do is
Except
interfere.
They act less.
All they do is interfere, and they're like, our job is to interfere.
The difference, though, is that the Watchers are not omniscient, or pardon me, the Guardians are not omniscient. They don't see everything.
I guess that's true. They don't see everything.
It's like if you had a bunch of Xaviers or Dumbledores, like who are just like manipulating you, making you do things, and like I don't blame Hal at all. Like I'm like, God, these guys suck.
And that's all the Green Lanterns ever talked about was like, man, those little Smurf.
The Guardians do.
do.
I mean, I think there's so much evidence to support the fact that the Guardians are terrible.
Yeah, they're worse at their job than like S.H.I.E.L.D., right? They're just terrible at what they do.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a Green Lantern storyline from anywhere I can remember where the Guardians are just top notch, doing great things. And
Right.
always like
There's only ever been, like, to my knowledge, like Ganthet, who we'll meet, who was introduced in another story.
Yeah.
Ganthet is like the one Guardian that's like, don't you guys see what's going on here? And don't you think we should do something about it? And the rest of them are like, nah, we're good.
Yeah,
And he's the only one with a ponytail, which is cool.
And that's how you know that he's.
There you go.
That's how you know he's cool, man.
And Ganthet constantly in trouble for it. Constantly. When they was like, hey, what if we had good intentions here? And they're like, God damn it, Ganthet. We do not want to have this conversation again.
We're tired of telling you, Ganthet. We don't want to. We're tired.
Yeah, I don't ever recall a story where anyone was even like, thank God the Guardians were here. Or said like, hey, you know what? Lunch was nice with the Guardians today. Like nobody's ever had anything nice to say about the Guardians.
The Guardians threw us a nice employee appreciation day.
Right. You know, like nothing.
All right.
Nothing. Okay, the art in this though. Bill Willingham as the artist. What do we think?
knockout. So good.
I loved it, except for the energy constructs. I think that some of the shades of green are barely green, and that, like, I didn't like that at all.
I think they were trying to do a thing though, Hugo, just to defend it in like what you're talking about, like when he creates the city.
In the city, yeah.
In the city.
So that's so that you have some contrast, some visual contrast.
I think so.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't really be able to tell that Hal's dad's coveralls are a different color than the kitchen set, you know?
Or even there's like
But
point
all
of
I'm saying
view,
is
like
that
depth
some of
to the
them
kitchen.
are like basically yellow, and they're not green.
Yeah. Yep. It ranges
That's
from
true.
very, very pale to very, very dark. You're right about that.
I think the pencils are great. It's very like, it almost feels Tom Grumman a little bit at times, which I love. The color though bleeds everywhere.
Yeah.
If you actually look at it, like the green is on his neck. It's like outside of the lines of some of the characters. Like
Welcome to 1994.
Yeah.
Well, more so than like normal books from 94. It feels just like they went really fast with this one.
Well, they
Like,
did.
the color. Yeah.
They did go very fast with these. So.
Yeah. The art is great though.
The art is great.
The opening shot of the hole is amazing.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of the hole, I picked up when it was happening in real time. I picked up on issue 49, and I only bought it because of the cover, because I was like, "Whoa, the cover is phenomenal." So
Daryl Banks cover. That's why Daryl Banks.
The next cover of 49. Yeah.
Oh,
So I
one.
didn't do this as it was happening. I went back to 48. So I forgot about this, but the opening narration is so over the top and dramatic and like, you know, kind of flip it that I was like, oh God, I hate this. And then I realized who's narrating. We'll get to here in a bit. That opening, I was like, God, like Ron Mars, like the way you're talking about the whole, like it just felt very like, and then it comes together later and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Of course that makes sense.
All three covers for Emerald Twilight are by Daryl Banks.
That's why they're amazing.
They had enough time. They had enough time for Banks to draw the covers at least, which is good.
The second one's the best.
Because obviously the second one's the best. The cover to Green Lantern 50 is awesome as well, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
49 is iconic. I mean, let's get into it.
Let's get into 49.
Let's get right into 49. Green Lantern 49, Part 2, The Present. You might notice a theme to these chapter titles. As Hal travels to Oa, 2 Green Lanterns show up to stop him. He defeats them very easily. He takes their rings, adding to his already considerable power. He continues on this path, confronting more lanterns and more lanterns and more lanterns. He systematically defeats them all. He grabs their rings, and by the time he gets to Oa, he's got them 10 rings, man.
Oh.
Like we see on the cover. And then finally, Kilowog, one of Hal's. Well, hold on. Can we pause on this?
Yeah.
Doesn't he not kill Kilowog until issue 50?
Yeah. He doesn't.
He just beats him up.
Yeah, because
think
Kilowog comes back.
So Hal takes out Kilowog. Things are not looking good for everyone's favorite Poozer. But we'll get to that. The Guardians, desperate now at this point to stop Hal, free Sinestro from imprisonment, sending him to confront Hal in the final line of defense. This is where we learn that the person narrating the story up to this point is Sinestro.
Yes. And this is when we all of a sudden you go, God damn, this Ron Mars kid is good.
Yeah.
So let's start with the cover. Iconic. Probably one of the most iconic Green Lantern covers ever. I think you'll all agree.
I do have a question about the cover, though.
I think it's the most.
Let me ask you this, because you know, obviously he wears his Green Lantern ring, and you can spot Hal's Green Lantern ring. It's circular, and it's got the symbol in it. All the rest of them look totally different.
Yep.
Is that by design? Does he have a special ring that I don't know about?
No, he has Abin Sur's ring. Now, bear in mind, this is 10 rings out of 3,600 rings.
I mean, sure, but they all look the same.
And if you look very closely, some of them are bands with the emerald symbol, the battery symbol attached to the band.
You're right.
Some of them is just one shape, and it's like the symbol is carved out of the band.
Yeah.
You can see the subtle differences there.
They are subtly
different. Abin Sur's ring was that circular, that iconic kind of circular ring that Hal has always.
I couldn't remember if Jeff Johns did something with that too.
Nope.
And was
the rings by and large are the rings. I think, you know, I think the user kind of shapes them to an extent.
Sure, like their costume. You make your own costume too.
To an extent.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I'll buy that. Page one. Oh,
you know what? Sorry. Let's back up because I forgot to mention that the art in this issue is done by Fred Haynes and Dennis Kramer. If you don't recognize those names,
there's a reason why.
Well, yeah.
Although page one, pretty cool. Like, it's a good spread. Now, I will say Hal went from confused, kind of upset, not in a good mood, to gritting teeth rage coming for you very quickly. Like this
art felt very imagey. Like,
it's very 90s, trendy, and 90s. Like,
big time.
Look at Hal is all roided out.
Oh, yeah.
Like this is, counterpoint, Matt. This is not a good spread because Hal looks like a Rob Liefeld character.
I mean, kind of. Yeah, his shoulders are massive. Like Hal looks like.
Look how big his thighs are.
Dude, yeah, I was gonna say, look at them quads.
Hal looks like 10 dudes pick him up and they beat down a castle door with him, right? Like, it's huge.
Yeah. I did not love the art in this. I did not.
It's rough.
So setting that aside, the art in this is not good. But we already know the reason why the art is the way it is. So beating up on poor Fred, who did his best with very little time, is probably not cool of us.
I mean, maybe.
Like, no.
You said yourself, we didn't see a lot of Fred after this either. So.
Well, but we don't really know.
The panel with the big guy in the background, where and I do like that Hal. They immediately send people that Hal brought into the core.
They're
in a lot of cases, yes.
Go reason with him. Basically.
I love the storytelling method here. I think if you had given Ron Mars the 6 issues that he had requested, I bet there'd have been an entire issue where you're cutting, where the Guardians are talking about who they're going to send, and they go out and they get them, and then they say, like, all this story that you didn't need. The fact that it happens so quick and they're all just there.
Oh yeah.
The method of just how it makes the spiraling feel more chaotic, like, because Hal's not slowing down, the storytelling's not slowing down, it's speeding up. Like they're covering a lot of like actual clock time in a few pages. And I love it. It's really
right.
Cool.
Because you could have done a whole issue of these 3 Green Lanterns come to get him, and the final panel after he beats up Tomar 2 or whatever is like the Guardians looking, and he's putting on 3 rings, and he's like,
and
then to be continued halfway point, right?
Yeah.
Instead of the finale,
right?
This panel of Hal getting ensnared by this one-eyed tentacle beast that Tomar 2 conjures is grotesquely hilarious.
It's not good.
It's very, very, it's very, very bad.
Tomar 2 is grotesquely hilarious.
Tomar 2 is the son of Tomar Ray, who is a legend, a Green Lantern legend.
He's the son or the father?
He's the son.
Oh,
Tomar Ray died.
Oh, okay.
Tomar Ray had been around since the Silver Age. He was one of the lanterns that helped usher Hal into the Corps.
Johns brings him back, though, right? Tomar Ray's around later in Jeff Johns.
No, Tomar. Is it
Tomar 2 the whole time?
Tomar Ray is dead.
Okay.
And in fact, I believe Tomar 2 goes bad, but that might be a different storyline.
Doesn't he become purple? Or am I thinking of a different character? There's like a Green Lantern villain who looks like that, but purple.
You're thinking maybe of Despero, who has a fin on his head. He's a Justice League villain.
Oh, and Despero's fin runs this way instead.
Well, in the Silver Age, but not anymore. In the modern age, he has a fin like this.
Yeah, he didn't have a
but in the Silver Age, when he was introduced, he had a sideways fin, which is a real choice.
Yeah. Okay.
So Hal makes short work of all of these Green Lanterns, including Jack T. Chance.
That's what I want to talk about.
That was introduced in Green Lantern Quarterly.
Oh, man.
He was probably the newest Green Lantern to be introduced.
Okay.
Which makes sense because he's very of the time.
He's Lobo, but with
Lobo-like character. Hugo pointed out, he was like, he walked over to the kitchen to show me the page, and he's just like, he's got like crack written on his gun with like a cross out through it because they're like, what did you say?
They're like, kids, don't use drugs.
Probably.
But at the same time, he has dice for gambling.
Because they call it crack on Jack T. Chance's planet, obviously. They also call it crack.
Right.
So I want to talk about Jack T. Chance briefly because, of course, I had to go down this rabbit hole because I was like, who the hell is this guy? So Jack T. Chance, created by John Ostrander, he is a Green Lantern that beats you up with his Green Lantern ring, does his thing, and then when he's done with that, he pulls out a gun and he shoots people in the face. That is his move. And the Green Lantern, the Guardians were like, well, we don't love that, but I guess it's okay. Now I want to go back to Hal, who created a 3D picture book that he was like, and that was selfish.
He didn't use his ring to do it,
and we got to take
Jack doesn't use his ring to do it.
He used his ring to soften him up before he executes people with a gun.
What happens what the ring doesn't know won't hurt it.
Hey, that's personal time. That's not company time.
Right, Jack T. Chance beats up perps, then he clocks out.
Right.
And then he shoots them.
So the subtle differentiation is if he conjures the gun and shoots them in the face with a conjured gun.
In fact,
we all know that
the ring would not.
They conjure guns like it's their job.
Yeah.
Like,
well, they do now,
bazookas,
but they couldn't
they're
back
shooting
then.
missiles. I mean, like all kinds of stuff.
Until Jeff Johns, until the Sinestro Corps War, actually, Green Lantern rings were incapable of lethal force.
Although, back in the Silver Age, we would often see Hal conjuring a giant mousetrap to ensnare someone or something.
Yeah, but it snaps very
huge boxing glove. Right?
I do love that Hal says, "You're going to use a gun on me, a gun." Like I love that. Like he's just like, this is stupid.
Like you haven't been here. You haven't been a Green Lantern very long, have you?
I love the thematic element in the art where Jack has rolled snake eyes.
Yeah. I hope this is,
on this very poorly drawn pair of dice.
and I sincerely hope this is Ron Mars saying, John, this character is stupid.
Well, okay, so you said this earlier, Matt, that he kills all these Green Lanterns, and in my mind, if you had asked me before I read this, he kills them all. I don't think he kills any of them.
No, he doesn't.
No, we're going to get to that.
They say so.
We're getting to that.
Yeah,
Up to
I
this,
remember reading it as a kid and being like, "Oh, he kills all of them," and
he doesn't kill any of them.
They certainly look
He
dead.
only kills Kilowog.
Yeah,
You're right, and we're going to get to that. They look dead, though.
And so
On the page,
I'll have more to say.
dead.
I'll have more to say about these lanterns later when we get to that point.
But in most shots, like somebody will put up a hand and they'll like say, Hal, don't. Like there's little. Like they reveal, like with each one of them, that they're still moving while they're floating.
Yeah,
I suppose.
The one, problem that I, kept thinking about was, okay, so he's taken off their lantern ring, which supplies them, the ability to fly through space. Now they're like unprotected body is just in the vacuum of space floating.
I mean, the idea is that Hal left them. Left them.
Yeah, that's why I thought that they were being killed, because he takes their ring, which is how they kill them.
The idea is that Hal left them with enough protection to survive until they until they could be recovered.
That's a great no prize answer.
It's a no prize that I feel like Ron probably thought of as he was writing issue 50. And he's like, oh shit.
Yeah, because if you look at these pages,
I have to explain how these characters are not dead.
Because on the page, they are dead. Like looking at this spread of him going through,
they look bad. They certainly do look very
these
bad.
people.
But even like I left them enough protection. Like, can you elaborate? Like, how does that work, man? What
you can't think about that stuff too hard, because then we get into like when you conjure a bazooka and it fires an explosive. Like, did you conjure all the mechanisms inside of the explosive to make it go boom? Like, where does this end?
Right? I mean, the answer to that is no, because unless it's like, for example, John Stewart, who is an architect. If John Stewart assembles a building, I would believe that John Stewart, who understands how buildings are constructed, would create a ring construct of a building so detailed that it would have all of the internal workings.
Yeah.
But if somebody like Kyle Rayner or even Hal Jordan conjures a complex machine, it's just going to be a ring construct that looks like that machine because
it doesn't have the machinations inside it. Yeah,
like it can't misfire.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Like Boudica conjures axes because obviously she's
a warrior.
Poorly drawn warrior.
The drawing of her face. Although when he cuts her arm off, that is so great.
Yeah.
I love it.
The ring,
Boudica.
Yeah, I thought so.
They do mention how some of these other characters were recruited by Hal. Not all of them, but some of them.
Mm-hmm.
But Boudica was recent. Boudica was not that old.
Yeah.
I believe within this run of Green Lantern is when she was recruited by Hal and joined the Corps. So this one was like a real betrayal.
So where at this time are I know Guy is not a Green Lantern at this time. Where's John Stewart?
John Stewart is probably in the Dark Stars at this time.
I just was like, God, where are those two?
Because he was in Green Lantern Mosaic, which was like,
well, that was before this though.
Yeah, I mean, but not a long time before this.
A couple of years,
I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so maybe he is a Dark Star. Or something.
I don't think he was a Green Lantern. I don't think John was a Green Lantern at the time because John does not show up in 0 Hour or anything like that.
Yeah,
you're right. He's not.
You're right.
So I think that John was either floating around aimlessly or at this point he had joined the Dark Stars.
Okay.
And then Guy was kicking around with Sinestro's yellow ring at this point.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Because
he had it in the Superman. Yeah.
Yep, because from the end of Emerald Twilight, there is a mention where Emerald Fallout begins in Guy Gardner Warrior.
Right.
And it is a direct follow-up to what happens here. And this is when Guy is he's no longer running around in the cowboy boots and the leather jacket. This is Guy Gardner, where he's wearing like the all yellow armor, and he's almost about to become Guy Gardner Warrior.
Oh boy. Oof.
I mean, they're better comics than the earlier run, earlier in the run.
That is saying something.
But yeah, Bo Smith was writing them running it at that point.
So before we move on, look, we got to talk about this Sinestro reveal. We have to.
That was my note. I was like hoping we would hit on that. It is the worst Sinestro's ever looked.
Oh my God.
Like,
100%.
It's so bad.
I was mad when I got to that. I was just like,
these
I didn't
eyebrows.
see any black in his black hair. It was all blue.
It's all
I've
blue.
never seen that.
And what is the mustache? It looks like they put it on in post or something, or he's disguised in a ridiculous like mustache. You know?
It
Now
looks like a
remember,
tattoo.
computer in comic book coloring shorthand, blue on black is just highlights.
Right.
So it's the light showing you the texture of his hair.
Okay,
He
but
doesn't
there's
have
no black in the. Like, there is
the
a
mustache
tear.
though, especially is solid blue.
It's solid blue.
And his eyebrows.
His eyebrows.
His eyebrows
Look
and
like
his.
Like
two.
those
Both
could
have-
have been black. We don't need to see individual hairs of the eyebrows or the mustache.
And in the next issue, he has a beard too. He's got the full, like connected.
Well, but in the next issue, a competent artist is taking.
This is true. But real quick,
Yeah.
so let's just talk about Sinestro, big bad guy.
Yeah.
We're introducing big fight. This is Hal's. He's the guy that trained Hal, right? And Sinestro was the best Green Lantern ever. He went really bad, and he became the worst. And we had to lock him up in the power battery because he was just so bad. And the Guardians were like, well, we don't have any choice. We got to let this guy out. Okay, fine. I'll buy it. My next question as a Guardian. Let's say Sinestro wins, right? Let's say
they made a deal with him. They made a plea bargain with him. They let him out. They're like, "Yep, okay."
So when
Sinestro's
most authoritarians win a battle, they always give power back.
Sure. Yeah. Sinestro's famous for this shit. So let's say Sinestro whips Hal's ass, like, done. And then puts on 4 Green Lantern rings and goes, okay, now here's how things are going to work around here. Like, you're not thinking this through, Guardians, at all.
And I love the back and forth to the Guardians as he's whipping all the Green Lanterns' asses. Like they really have no plan.
No,
like, they don't.
They are not planned.
They are thrown. So I buy that they made a terrible decision in the moment because they don't know what they're doing.
I will say it tracks with how bad the Guardians are at their job. I'll say that.
Right.
But it's tantamount to like
very Charles Xavier Dumbledore sort of movie.
Right. Like imagine if on like January 6th, they're like, oh man, the Capitol's being overrun. Release all the prisoners from the local prison to stop them, or something. Like, whoa, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah, it's a
choice. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So Joe, remind me, I don't remember. How did he get into obviously they put him there.
I will tell you. So I want you to think about 1994. Think about everything you know about the DC universe from around that time. If you were reading Batman or Superman,
very
or
little,
other comics.
to be honest.
But Sinestro, not really somebody you saw around.
Yeah.
That's because Sinestro had not been seen outside of flashbacks since 1988.
So this is a pop. Wow. This is like a full-on wrestling pop.
This is a major, huge reveal.
Okay.
And so not only had Sinestro been imprisoned in the Central Power Battery, but he was executed for his crimes by the Green Lantern Corps in 1988.
What does that? How? Huh?
Well, he says when he's in there, he was separated from his body. He couldn't feel his consciousness.
Oh, so they put his spirit
disembodied
in
him.
the power battery.
Yeah. And so they stored his consciousness. His consciousness was locked away in the power battery.
Gotcha.
And they held a big trial for him. It was a big deal, and it basically kind of led to the downfall. Like a very huge schism in the Corps. It was bad stuff.
Okay.
Sinestro is executed, and he has been in the power battery ever since.
A long time.
And so for them to bring him back, the last issue of that storyline is the final issue of Green Lantern Corps 224, from May of 1988. And then it's not for another 2 years that Hal gets his own title again with Green Lantern #1.
Okay. All right. So this was shocking.
It's a big deal. Like bringing Sinestro back is a big deal.
This was
he was a
shocking.
major villain. He was a major villain that had been off the table for a very long
Which makes it even cooler that he was narrating the previous issues.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And it also makes it that much lamer when he shows up out of the power battery looking like this cheese ball.
Good God.
What
He's dressed. I don't know what this is. It's like a weird hoodie with shoulder pads and
a
like
cod piece.
Yeah. Which
That
may
is a
or may
giant
not be
white
metal.
long hang-
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
It's something.
All right. So
He's back.
the big event, the main event, Green Lantern #50. This cover is also by Daryl Banks and Romeo Tanghal. This cover was glow in the dark. The background, the green lantern and the stars were glow in the dark.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was like
They had texture to them because you had to apply that kind of glow in the dark material.
I took it out to show it to Hugo maybe a year or so ago. We were trying to get the glow in the dark to work, and I was like, God, I remember. It feels like a blacklight poster.
It's almost sandpapery.
the cancer causing agent that makes it glow is like impossible to like smooth out, unfortunately. So
pencils for this issue are by the new ongoing Green Lantern artist, Daryl Banks, with inks by the same old Green Lantern inker, Romeo Tanghal. Colors in this issue are by Steve Madison. Yeah. The colors are doing some weird shit with the purple coloring and stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that. So here's your breakdown for Green Lantern #50. Emerald Twilight Part 3, The Future. It's Hal versus Sinestro. And of course, they have a brutal battle across Oa. Sinestro is trying to convince Hal that he's lost his way. Hal refuses to listen. It's back and forth, back and forth. Hal has 10 rings. Sinestro should stand no shot, but he appeals to Hal's pride, and Hal ditches the rings, and they go at it one-on-one.
of course.
Which makes it a much more brutal fight. I mean, come on, it had to be that way. It wouldn't be satisfying otherwise. And it ends with Hal snapping Sinestro's neck. Like Hal crosses the line in a big way, in a way that he hadn't before.
Or does he? Jeff Johns would later reveal that Hal did not kill Sinestro. Hal killed a hard light projection of Sinestro that was being steered.
Oh, that's neither here nor there.
I know you all love Jeff Johns, but that guy drives me more mad than he makes me happy.
That means nothing to this story.
No, it means nothing to this story.
It's why I still like Death in the Family, even though I hate Jason.
No, and it's look, Jeff Johns loves Hal Jordan so much that he just couldn't. He's like, no, he would never do that.
God.
Parallax be damned, he still wouldn't.
So Hal kills Sinestro, or so we think.
He killed him. He's dead. He killed him.
And this is the first time that Hal has crossed this line in this storyline, because after this happens, right before Hal is about to enter the central power battery, Kilowog returns. He's still kicking. And Hal reveals that he did not leave those other core members completely powerless. He left them stranded, yes, but he left them enough power so that they could survive. And then Kilowog was like, well, what happens when you absorb the power battery? What happens to the people that are in action? What happens if they're in a fight somewhere or saving lives?
Yeah.
What happens if you absorb the power battery then? And Hal just won't hear it. He's too far gone. He's like, I can't think about that now.
Yeah, 'cause there's definitely Green Lanterns that are like in space right now, flying around, and you're just gonna flip the switch and turn it off. What are they gonna do?
It's like taking away the power that he left them.
Well, but not only that, like somewhere there is a Green Lantern with a dozen or more people in a bubble,
Sure.
flying them away from danger.
Yeah, or holding a rock.
Midair.
It's like the snap in Infinity War.
Exactly
There
like
was probably
Infinity War.
a pilot flying a plane who just disappeared, and that plane had to go down. you know?
and because of the law of averages, it is possible that that pilot was the only person on that plane that disappeared.
Yeah.
And so an entire plane load of people is dead just because.
Sure.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what would have happened after Hal absorbed the power battery. Everybody using a ring or being affected by a ring in any way is dead. Or not dead, rendered powerless. Lots of deaths though.
In trouble.
But what awesome writing from Mars to have Kilowog, because he's bringing the severity of this. So it's not just I'm gonna superhero thing and take the power, and now he's bringing real world stakes to it, and it's awesome.
So Mars said in an interview I was just watching before this, they didn't want Hal to murder the entire Green Lantern Corps, and Mars is like, we have to kill someone. We've got to kill someone, and it can't be just Sinestro, because Sinestro's a bad guy. And there will be people that'll be like, well, yeah, good. He should have killed Sinestro. And even Sinestro, in an excellent line, Sinestro, when he's about to die, is like, you probably should have done this to me a long time ago.
It's my favorite line of the whole series.
And Hal's like, you're right.
What makes it even better is that he doesn't actually get that whole line out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says, you probably should have crack.
Yeah. And
then that's what makes it great.
And also too, this is why this line is so well constructed, is that, he says, I should have done this to you. Should have done this a long time ago. Damn you. And his next words are, it's like,
you're right. You probably should have. Was going to be the end of that sentence.
Like, you could have written that in a way cheesier, actiony way, and he's just like, you dumb fuck, you probably should have.
Right.
Like,
it's like, you better kill me, Jordan.
Yeah, you could have done that.
I'm coming for you.
Let me ask you,
like, you know what? You probably should have.
Was Killing Joke before or after this?
Way before.
It was before.
Much
okay.
before.
Because that gave me some serious Killing Joke vibes where the Joker realizes.
There is a line in here, and I can't remember what it was, and I almost wrote it down, and I was like, no, you're being nitpicky, where he says, I came to talk about you, about me, or something. And somebody says that here, and that is like the Killing Joke.
Okay, because I got some serious Killing Joke vibes from that panel, and I wasn't sure which was first. But back to what we were saying about Kilowog, Mars said, we've got to kill someone. And it's got to be brutal, and it's got to be on the panel, and it's got to be somebody that they love. And I guess Denny O'Neil and Kevin Dooley, the editors, they're like, no, because they knew he was going to say Kilowog. And he's like, we're killing Kilowog. And they're both like, oh, it's too good. We have to do it. Damn you, Ron Mars.
Oh, I love it. It's great.
Well done.
And it's a great panel. He blows him up. He's
the drawing, I drew that so many times as a kid.
It's so violent without any blood, because it's all green, of course. This is a green explosion, but
it's silhouetted, so it's just but you're seeing the flesh blow off his body.
Yeah, he's blowing the guts out of him, basically.
Well, yeah, you see his burnt skeleton afterwards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brutal.
So
love it.
Yes. So Hal kills Kilowog in a tragic moment. Hal finally loses it completely and blows Kilowog to smithereens. And there's a moment where he's sobbing. He's like, I've crossed the line. I can't go back. He tosses the ring aside. I don't deserve this. And then the Guardians finally decide to show up. And they're like, yep, you're right, Hal. You don't deserve your ring.
Fucking guys.
Get ready to be punished. And Hal's like, give me a break. And then he lets himself be absorbed into the power battery, which starts this chain reaction. While this is happening, the Guardians, or one Guardian in particular, Ganthet, it's like, we can't just let this happen. What is wrong with all of you?
Sensitive ponytail guardian.
Sensitive ponytail guardian Ganthet.
Who looks to be maybe he's also drawn a little bit younger.
He is, right?
Maybe. But then the rest of the Guardians are like, you know what? Yep, Ganthet, you're right. But we don't want to do it. Why don't you do it? And so they give Ganthet all of their power. They kill themselves.
Yeah.
To give Ganthet all of their power.
Now, to the Guardians' credit, they're like, this whole thing was a really bad experiment and we sucked at it. They're like, this is bad. And you know what, Ganthet? I think you're probably right.
It was the best decision they've ever made.
It is easily the best decision the Guardians have ever made. Let's kill ourselves. I'm not one to like push for suicide, but
So now
We're gonna drink the Kool-Aid.
They drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah.
to Mars's credit, he does kind of come up with a bit of a justification rather than just saying, "You're right, we're going to lay down and die."
yeah.
One of them says, "Brothers, are we so atrophied to save ourselves or to preserve this doctrine by which we have guided the universe?" And the another one goes, "Yeah."
Yeah. He's like, suicide time, baby.
And then Ganthet is like, "Am I the only one that thinks this is terrible and unacceptable?" And they're like, "Ganthet's right. We have to do the unthinkable. We must act. There's only one course of action left. Ganthet is the one to do it." And then they do a Care Bear stare, and they give Ganthet all of their power. As this is happening, the power battery, the central power battery, which powers the Green Lanterns across the universe, explodes.
Except for Alan Scott. Not that one.
Well, except for Alan Scott, whose powers come from something else.
Yeah, he's a magic man.
And once the smoke clears, all that is left standing is Parallax. It is Hal Jordan in the Parallax armor, pre-cape. Oh. He doesn't decide to add the cape till later.
Sure.
He looks around at the damage that he has caused. He sees the dead bodies of all of the Guardians. And then out of the corner of his eye, he sees a glint. And enraged, he flies over to find his Green Lantern ring that he discarded. And he crushes it underneath his boot.
Ooh. Ooh.
Pretty chilling stuff. And then he flies off into space.
Yeah.
And that's it.
The splash of him is just
I want that on my wall.
Frameable piece of art.
So
it has a frame.
You rightfully so, Matt. You get really angry when artists sign something mid-story, but this totally deserves to be signed.
I think it's different when they're signing every panel like that one comic.
Yeah. No, this is like
when you're signing the right thing. I get it. So fun editorial story here. Daryl Banks comes to Ron Mars and is like, well, after he absorbs all his power, he should have like a badass outfit and stuff, right? And Mars is like, I think that's cool, but I don't think we're doing that because they want Hal to go away. They're like, we're done with Hal. So, I'll show it to him or whatever, but that's not really the story. Like, I think we have to like just either kill Hal or at least have it look like he went with the Guardians and they vanished in the battery. And so they're like, yeah, we like the story like it is. Thanks. And he's like, oh, and Daryl Banks drew this thing. And he shows it to him and they go, fuck! Like, that is so cool. And so then they're like, okay, time out. Okay, time out. Like, so
Hal doesn't go away.
Hal doesn't go away.
Just for a little bit.
Yeah. And that's when Ron Mars is like, well, yeah, we could, now we've got like a cosmic level badass because before this, it's really just Darkseid. That's really it. He's the big cosmic bad. And now you've got a cosmic bad that knows Superman, that is buddies with the Flash, that like
knows these people's secret identities.
Has been connected to all these, and they're just like, dude. Yeah. And they love it so much that they go, okay, we're doing the thing. You're going to create this other Green Lantern.
So it's Daryl Banks' fault that 0 hour happens.
Yes. So
that's a great point.
Yes. So they're like, okay, we're going to do a different thing. Hal goes away. And like that gives them this time to come up with this whole storyline with Parallax and everything. While Ron Mars and Daryl Banks are doing their thing that they were told to do, their job, come up with a new Green Lantern.
And they're unaware, by the way, that that's the plan.
They have no idea.
All they know at this point is that Hal goes away. They don't even call him Parallax. He's there's not a line. There's not a single word of dialogue
now
after he comes out of the battery.
Daryl Banks named this character Parallax.
Well, fine, but they don't. It's not committed to the page.
No, not here, not yet. And the whole idea is like the definition of Parallax is basically
there's a
judging something. Oh, I was just going to say the definition of Parallax is judging something from two different vantage points, right?
Yes, Parallax.
Is it good? is he bad? I'm like, oh, it's so good.
There's a line in Mad Men where they say, it sometimes takes a crisis to do work this good. And this is a great example of it. Like, totally. It's like the second Rage Against the Machine album. Like they wrote it and recorded it in like 2 weeks or something like that. Like, where it's just like, you're time boxed, figure it out. Yeah. And then like the creative, you kind of get in the zone and you just like, you make all these great choices. Like I'm looking at the splash page right now, and this is a better executed version of the Azrael Batman upgrade.
100%.
It's just like, it's trying to modernize it, trying to make it 90s, but it works still to this day. It's phenomenal.
Well, and it's everything
I think this costume still holds up. I think it is an incredible design.
It's amazing.
He looks like a new god.
This splash page is...
He does, Hugo.
This splash page is everything they wanted Hal Jordan to be or do and could not achieve in the comic before this and get it to sell. And the only way to get it here, make him a bad guy.
What a great
it's a perfect heel turn.
Just it's not even just that. It's what a great metaphor for just like how to like fix things in your life. Is just like, let all of your pretense go and just kind of hit rock bottom and just go, all right, where am I going to pivot to now? Like, and that's kind of, they would have never got here had they tried to like, we're going to turn Hal Jordan into a cool 90s upgrade. Like they would have never got here.
Yeah. No, never. And this whole issue, it is pure wrestling storytelling. Good guy who looks like he's doing something bad, but then he realizes it's bad and he's like, oh, I can't do it. I've done so much bad stuff to get here. I'm sorry. And you're like, yay, he's a good guy again. And then like, oh no, he's not. He's even worse. Like it's perfect wrestling storytelling. All right.
Stop ruining it with your wrestling talk. We're not even done talking about this issue.
I know.
All right. So after Hal flies away, Ganthet wrestles his own way out from underneath the pile of his dead brother's bodies.
Obviously, they just fell on him. He was like, "Wait, you got you
and he's like, "Okay, well, I guess I know what I need to do." He goes and he finds Hal's ring in the dust, the broken ring, and he forms it from the broken shards of Hal's ring. He creates a new ring, and then he flies off. In a very cool way, like turns himself into a giant cosmic fireball and flies away. It's so rad.
With a face.
I know. I love it. It looks so cool.
I love it too. I love the face.
Fireball with a face.
The face
we cut to Earth and we see the young man from issue 48 who commented on the shooting star, except it's coming right at him. Oh my, like literally right at me. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Green explosion, and there in the alleyway, Kyle Rayner stands before Ganthet.
Can we call him what he is? 9 Inch Nails fan, Kyle Rayner.
9 Inch Nails fan, Kyle Rayner.
That needs to be brought.
Wearing his homemade 9 Inch Nails t-shirt.
Yes. Way to date your comic book guy.
It looks like you created that with puffy paint.
Kind of.
I was going to say that was actually awesome. Like I think this.
Look, it is. Well, you know what? Because.
He's a graphic designer.
Later on, I just happened to read another issue of the Ron Mars Green Lantern this morning after this. I don't, no reason whatsoever. I was just like, And like he mentions Aphex Twin, like Ron Mars in the script, Aphex Twin.
He's a nerd. Yeah, he's a music
and
nerd.
So like, these guys know.
I mean, sure, but there's not a world in 1994 where Trent Reznor approves the yellow and purple 9 Inch Nails shirt.
Well, sure. It's not even the 9 Inch Nails logo. It's just a t-shirt that says
literally just says 9 Inch Nails.
It makes sense because he's a graphic designer. It's homemade. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yellow and purple. It is yellow and purple.
Yeah.
So in the alley,
maybe 80s 9 Inch Nails would have looked like that. But.
Maybe.
94.
In the alley before Kyle Rayner stands Ganthet. And Ganthet's one sage-like line of advice to Kyle is, you shall have to do.
Yeah.
I love it.
Could have been anyway. Now, it wouldn't have been even better if it was the drunk homeless guy behind Kyle.
Right. If Kyle took an extra 30 seconds coming out of the bathroom.
Yeah.
Or whatever, yeah.
And they're like, okay, drunk homeless guy, this is going to seem like a lot. But things are going to be different for you now.
No instructions, no nothing. He doesn't tell Kyle what the ring is, what the ring does. He doesn't even hand him the power battery. He just says, Kyle says, what am I supposed to do with this? And then Ganthet says, what you must. And then he disappears. And he puts the ring on because why wouldn't you if a blue space alien in a red dress handed you a ring? And then he immediately is enshrouded in the Green Lantern's standard uniform. And that is how we end issue 50.
Yeah. So what do we think of Emerald Twilight? I loved it more than I did when I read it, which is not usually the case. I remember thinking it was good, but I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah. The only thing was I didn't remember the art being so all over the place.
Yeah, that's not.
It totally makes sense now.
It makes sense now. Yeah.
Right. I think that. Go ahead, Hugo.
Out of Death of Superman, Nightfall, like all of Nightfall, Night's Quest, Night's End, and all of Death of Superman, I like this more than both of them.
I think it's more interesting as to what happens to the character. I agree with you, Hugo. And it's not,
which is weird considering how cynically it was created.
Well, and also what happens to every character. So like, like the what happens to Sinestro is interesting. What happens to Kilowog is interesting. The way the Guardians act is interesting. The way Ganthet, they could have done. They subverted expectations at every turn in every story beat. Ganthet could have came to Earth and been like, I must find somebody worthy, and he's just like, nope, fuck it, you'll do. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, every beat they did not what you expected.
Right. But even that is on purpose. Ron Mars had that on purpose in his head. And the idea being he had never written DC Comics before. And so he was going to use this everyman character who is Ron Mars, who's you, who's me, who's anyone who picks up the comic book as a tourist in the DC universe as a superhero. You literally just got the job, kid, which is awesome. It's such a great idea and it makes such great sense. This was rushed. This was done for editorial reasons. This was not the way that anybody who worked on the story wanted it to happen because it was so truncated. But even in the face of all that, they did something pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
Totally
the people, like, we know this from, like oral histories and articles and things that have been written about it at the since, and presumably the same applies for the Batman. But with the death of Superman and the reign of the Supermen, all of the creators involved got together way in advance and they plotted out this huge sprawling story.
Yeah,
2 years worth of story. Like they all had a hand in making the decisions and coming up with the ideas and et cetera, et cetera. This came together in, how long do you think it took Ron Mars to write?
He wrote this in a weekend. He was writing
the whole storyline or just the first issue?
He was writing some of it at a Peter Gabriel concert that he had tickets to.
Whoa.
Yeah. Like this happened so fast.
Yeah.
Because they like I said, they already had those issues in the can. So it was late. They got rid of issues 48, 49, 50 and said, do it, go.
Yeah.
And we're late. We need it by this time.
So I think that it speaks to Ron Mars's strength as a writer, skill as a writer.
Yeah.
And it also is one of the number one reasons why his run is still celebrated even today.
Oh, sure.
And it holds up. I'm about 30, 40 issues into rereading Ron Mars's Green Lantern right now. And minus the dated stuff because it was the 90s, it's still very, very,
it's
very
great.
Good.
I will say in retrospect, when we look at it and we get the full story, we go, this is pretty amazing. It's a feat. It's maybe not the best executed, but they did it. And warts and all, it comes out pretty great. As a reader, back at this time, you don't know any of this, and you're just reading Green Lantern comics, and you're a Hal Jordan fan, I absolutely understand why you're mad.
I mean, people were sending death threats. They were assembling on. This was the beginnings of the internet as something for like the average person.
Yeah.
And so this is where we saw like your first comic book trolls.
Sure.
You know, they're like literally death threats and mailing campaigns.
I'm not saying
and
like
organized
I
efforts. No. But I'm saying like there was an outrage.
Sure. But think about it. Outside of one issue of Superman, where Hal teams up with Superman and they go and beat up Mongol, and who was the other guy that was trying to build the
Cyborg Superman? What do you mean? Who was the other guy?
Cyborg Superman was it was
Cyborg Superman. Right. He's the main villain.
Right. No, I forgot. But like outside of one issue of that, and then an issue where Hal Jordan comes to grips with this, and it's just like still being a hero. And now let's take a break for me to go run around with Ollie for 2 issues. Green Arrow and Green Lantern team up just like old times. And then the next issue, in the crater crying, looking at like, nope, he's not over it. He's super upset, as a matter of fact. Like,
yeah.
If you're a reader,
it's true.
This was neck breaking. Like you just went, what? How did this happen?
Much like Hal's fight with Sinestro.
Yes, true. Hugo, start us off. Buy it, skim it, or leave it for Emerald Twilight.
I think that it's a buy it, and I like it more than Nightfall and all of Nightfall and all of Superman.
In your face. Superman and Batman creators.
Hot take.
Hot take. Yeah, from the mouths of babes.
Except for issue 51. I did not like that very much. First 3 are really good.
For me, it is definitely a buy it. It's one of those rare times where it's better than I remember it being.
Fair. Mr. Mick?
Yeah, I am giving it a huge buy it as well.
Yeah, it's a buy it from me also, just like all the things we said.
Yep.
Like you said, Hugo, sometimes you don't need a year to tell a story. You can do it in 3 issues. Right?
This is a buy it from me too. This is pretty formative stuff when it comes to my love of Green Lantern. The Ron Mars run on Green Lantern is what got me interested in the character in the first place. I had 1 or 2 Hal Jordan comics as a kid, and I just knew him as that guy that was sometimes in the Justice League, and he was in the Super Friends. Other than that, though, I wasn't really following the book. This writer, this Daryl Banks art, that's what got me into Green Lantern.
Yeah, same.
And it holds up today.
I was straight up mad when they brought Hal back. I was like, no, Kyle is my Green Lantern. This is BS.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a really good sign of something that was so powerful that it feel like it transformed that universe. Again, I'm a hater of bringing back Jason Todd. It's very similar. It's like, no, you did such a good job. Like, let the sleeping dog lie.
Totally.
The death of Barry Allen and the rise of Wally West into stepping into his uncle's shoes. Like,
perfect.
These are things that that reverberated so strongly in the DC universe that the universe was irrevocably altered. And to just hit the nostalgia button because the grumpy old men that didn't like it in 1994 still don't like it in 2004.
Sure.
It's a shame.
Yeah. And it really is established legacy in the DC universe as well, because legacy was something they always talked about. Their legacy with this and the legacy of these heroes and the JSA.
Well, but
legacy.
they didn't really talk about it.
I mean, I guess not.
Until Wally.
Yeah. Until Wally and until Kyle. And I mean, like, these characters came and took major characters' jobs and pissed a lot of people off, but guess what? Sold a lot more comic books than it was.
I mean,
selling,
it was the first time that most comic book reading audiences saw the sidekick actually grow up and do what sidekicks are supposed to do.
I guess it really
which
was.
Is take their mentors' places.
Yeah, Marvel certainly wasn't doing that at the time. So
nope.
Green Geeks, thank you for joining us. This was fantastic. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Although we are recording this on Stone Cold Steve Austin Day, 3/16. So that should be acknowledged.
St. Patrick's Day, parentheses.
Remember to put 2 open cans of Busch Light outside for Stone Cold.
That's right. I'm going to clap them together and then pour them all over my face. All right, boys. Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Excelsior! Oh.
That is it for THN 772. Next week, the new comic book show returns. If you want to talk about Emerald Twilight or this week's new comics, join our Discord. We got a link up there at twoheadednerd.com. All kinds of other cool stuff as well, like our written reviews coming soon.
Yeah.
Up-to-date written reviews coming this week.
Love it.
You can also participate in the THN Gang Hang on Saturdays at 11 o'clock Central Time, unless Steve Baum needs tech support.
Don't get me started. THN is a multi-million-dollar project, and it is listener-supported. We wouldn't have those millions without the generosity of donors like our patron, Amy from North Dakota. She's like a little Richie Rich. She's got like all these weird money symbols all over her house and stuff, and she slides down the money symbol.
All of her
money.
The polka dots on her clothes are actually dollar signs.
Just loaded. If you like what you hear every week and you're loaded like Amy, and you want access to exclusive THN content, it's easy to support the show. You can sign up to be a patron at patreon.com/twoheadednerd. Next week's extra, we're finishing our top 5 X events. You will not believe what happens. We don't agree on number 1. I don't think it's ever happened before.
You know, I'm not going to bother fact checking that because it makes for good radio.
Yeah, come on.
Before we go, our weekly shout out goes to our very own Frank Cirillo, who's been laid low by COVID this past week. Frank is such a dedicated listener that he was going to drag his carcass out of bed for the gang hang on Saturday.
Ain't nobody want to hear that, Frank. We love you.
Luckily for Frank, we didn't have one. You're welcome. Get well soon, buddy.
Until next time, true believers, remember to pre-order your comics or your little blue balding retailer might show up and take them all away because you're using them for selfish purposes. This is the Two-Headed Nerd signing off.
And then he's just going to randomly give them to some guy in an
Somebody
alley.
else. Yeah. Like, I guess you'll do. And then they just gives them your comic books.